So what we were saying is that NDIS did their review in December. That means, and that told us what they wanted houses to look like in 5 years' time. So the NDIS providers had a little panic attack because they thought that they weren't going to be able to use their house in 5 years' time. But that's not the case at all. It's just guidelines. It's from the NDIS saying that we're not building enough houses and we are way behind with demand. So they wanted to put more people into each house that was getting built. And of course, they'll increase or we'll get paid more rent for doing it because otherwise we're never going to keep up with the demand. And it's a whole lot easier for them NDIS providers to manage more people in one location, which is typically why we build houses side by side or, a couple in the same street or definitely very, very close by so that they can be very easily managed by the NDIS providers and all their staff and the buses that run around to pick them up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that review was done. NDIS providers had a good look at what it all meant. It meant that they would need to build bigger houses in future as well. So that means new quotes from builders. So all that has happened over the Christmas break and New Year's break. And, the builders have been back at work a couple of weeks now and we've got all those quotes for new properties. So hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have the new pricing for the profit share properties, which will be at least $55,000 more expensive than what they were last year. Then we've got the build to rent properties, which is where you get the standard rental income and no more. And those houses are about $90,000 more expensive than what they were in December. And then there is also another builder that we've been dealing with who's got some entry-level properties, and you'll see in a minute that this is exactly the problem. I'm just going to get Matt to mute. Let's have a look. Oh no, Matt's mute. Yeah, alrighty. So we've been talking about people buying houses in Western Australia where the number of houses being built is already greater than what the demand will be in 20 years' time. And so there are some other examples of, builders just think NDIS is a great idea, so they've jumped in on it. And this is an example which you'll see. So if we have a look here, we've got price lists directly from one of the builders that we've been using, but they just live in a different world and they really don't give a shit about what happens to the house once you've built it. So if we have a look, we can buy a house just over $716,000. We would never build an improved livability house these days because that's one of the things that the government said they didn't want in 5 years' time. So we would be nuts to build one. And the difference to go from improved livability to high physical support it's very roughly, that's not exactly correct, but around the $40,000 mark. And so we would be nuts to, build improved livability, especially when, we're spending an extra $40,000 or so, but the rent is going from $161,000 a year as an improved livability property, which is huge. It's a 22% return, thereabouts, maybe, yeah. So it's a huge return, but none of our customers will be building it because we want them to keep having money in 5 years' time so they can keep buying more properties from us. So we'd go for the high physical support, so we're up to around the $750,000, $60,000 mark, and then the rent has gone up to $189,000. We've also been talking about fire extinguishers or fire sprinkler systems put into the properties, and that's always been topic of discussion because the NDIS want it. We don't need it in improved livability, and we don't need it in robust, but we certainly should be having it in fully accessible or high physical support houses. So my first point with all this is that we don't deal directly with the builders because they're just building whatever they think will make them money, and they don't really care what happens to the investor at all. Full stop. We see it over and over again. Seen it in Townsville, seen it in Western Australia, and we're pretty much looking at it right here as well. There's no point building such a limited property. So we go high physical support. The rent goes up significantly. We're paying $40-something thousand extra, and we're getting $20,000 a year extra in rent, so it's definitely worthwhile. The fire extinguishers are relevant across all the different builders and NDIS providers that we have. So it's typically worthwhile spending the money for the fire extinguishers. We've just got a purely high physical support house, which none of you guys have. But keep in mind, you spend $69,000. I've done the calculations. It takes just over 8.5 years for that $69,000 to be repaid back to you. So that's break-even point after 8 and a bit years. So that would mean 11 and a bit years, you're making an extra $7,922 on today's rate. So you're making about $88,000 extra. And of course, that would go up over time with inflation too. So it's definitely worthwhile from a income point of view to be putting fire extinguishers in your next property, should it be needed. This is in the north of Adelaide, where there's demand, and we have a lease with a company called Angel Care over there. The income's very attractive to a lot of people, but we need to spend a bit more to make sure we get a high physical support house. And therefore, obviously, we can still put an improved livability person in. So we've got a lot more options that way. The pretty standard design, really. Any of the houses that we have these days have their own ensuite, which is also another issue that there's been in the past. If they didn't have their own ensuite, then participants didn't want to share a toilet, so they didn't get rented as fast as what we would have liked. So that's something that we've learned over the time. And yeah, so that's an example of there's 5 properties there. What the builder's trying to sell nice and cheap is sort of irrelevant to the real world demand in that area. So another example of not believing builders, because all they want to do is sell the stuff and they don't really give a damn about what's going to happen next. I'm getting a copy of the lease for that just to make sure that it's all suitable for our investors, and it's in a high area of high demand too. North Adelaide, the land's quite cheap out there. Build price is roughly the same wherever we go, and the rental returns are really good. So with having fire extinguishers in one of those houses, the income's $197,000 for the 2 participants in there. And I believe in that area it's relatively easy to get 2 participants. So that would be a really good rent to buy. The low startup costs, because the land is relatively cheap. You might only need $20,000 or $30,000 for the deposit on the land, 5% on the build, another $30,000 or so. Some stamp duty on the land, whatever it is, 10, 15. We're up to about $75,000. Some fees on valuations, another 4 or 5. $80,000, and we're up and running, and getting into an NDIS property, paying the repayments over the years while it's being built. So, and a bit more, and the SDA fees, etc. So, which I'm just getting confirmation of as well, and maybe 130, 140,000 to get that finished, and then we've got at least 161 in income coming in. So it all stacks up pretty well. The point of it is, don't believe the builders, because if you built that cheapest thing you possibly could, you may not be getting income for very long, and people would much prefer to be in, you have more chance of having it rented out as high physical support. The other thing that came up recently was that the NDIS has actually done a quarterly review, and that was pretty interesting, because it shows you that the NDIS is, let me just share the screen. Can all of us see a nice purple screen? I think I've muted everybody. Anyway, if somebody could just say you can see it, hopefully. Yeah. Matt, can you see that purple screen?
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Yay. So what's really important for you guys to know is that you've all taken a leap of faith in the NDIS, and obviously me and Lawrence. But when you go and have a look at the statistics, the amount of money that's getting tipped in and the demand that's not being met, it would be very difficult to find a better investment anywhere else in the world. There's really sad in here about, children waiting for services, but they're your customers in the future. So we know there's an enormous amount of ongoing customers. This I can email out to everybody, or you can just, if you just look at quarterly review, NDIS quarterly review on Google, it'll take you to an area where it gives you all the quarterly reviews. I've just pulled up the last one. There's an extra 17,000 people in the NDIS over the last quarter. A few people have either died or got taken out of it, or had their funding removed. So, there's a net increase of 5,000 people every month going into NDIS, and then there's a certain portion of those that need accommodation. The complaints that once upon a time people heard about NDIS have been addressed by NDIS. The only complaint that I ever heard was just overcrowding and shitty accommodation, but that's exactly what we're looking to alleviate and solve that problem. We say it every week. It's really group homes. It's unsuitable accommodation. People have got nowhere else to go. We've got NDIS providers that are keeping people in caravan parks. So that's not ideal at all, trying to get them to a shower block and look after them, everybody else around. And try doing that in winter. Then, of course, it talks a little bit about how much money's getting spent and where it's getting spent. What it was talking about was how the service guarantees. So there's service guarantees on things, and it's not taking an unreasonable amount of time to get people looked after. So the government's pumped an enormous amount of money into this, as we all know, and the system is running very, very smooth. And the only complaints that I've ever seen against NDIS providers are by families of disabled people, for quite petty things in a lot of cases. And you look at some of the complaints and, you can tell a robust participant is probably being made robust by the craziness of their family. So a lot of it is you can just dismiss as crazy people having a whinge about not much at all. A lot of it there's legitimate concerns, but the NDIS, every one of them that we've dealt with, caring, sharing people that put the benefit of the participant first and have sorted out any issues that they've had. And they're terrified of having any issues because if they have constant issues, they don't get their accreditation again, and they've got an enormous source of income that's just disappeared. So the amount of money that people paid on average it's interesting as well. You know, the average is in the $400,000 mark plan, Australia-wide. Look at in Northern Territory, up into the $600,000 mark. So you can guess why that is. So it's an enormous amount of money, and it shows you that it's actually increasing all the time. So we're having a look at it in pretty much every category of spending is increasing, so that's really good for us. It's not being cut, more and more money's being spent. That's the independent proof on it as well. And what I was saying about stock, so we've got those rent to build to rent properties that we just had a look at before in Salisbury North, South Australia. I've been chasing up some more profit share properties because we haven't had any of those for a while, and at the end of this week we'll have some more of those, a little bit more expensive, and we've got some of the other build to rent in Renmark, which is still the number one area of demand in Australia for our NDIS providers as well. So there'll be a fair bit of, I shouldn't say a fair bit because there's quite a waiting list of people, but at least we'll be up and running again towards the end of this week with something that people can invest into in decent areas, and with the leases from the NDIS providers, and not just the marketing crap that we hear from builders as well. Alrighty, guys. So any questions on that at all? I think the builders are all back. They've been chasing up paperwork and chasing up contracts, so I'm pretty sure we're up and running. At the end of this month, we've got a lady called Kristen starting with us who is replacing Ant and who will have project management software to step you all step by step through each process of the transaction and make sure all the paperwork's happening, the building's up to date, the certifications are being done, your finances getting paid, etc. So yeah, we're pretty much up and running for a pretty good year this year, and you will all have income by the end of this year coming into your bank accounts as well. So that's also nice to know. All right. Anything else from me? No more questions? If there's no more questions, I'll leave it there. Yep. All right.
When we Joe.
Yep.
Joe, when we build a house and the building starts, we get progress photos, don't we?
Yeah. So there's pretty much 5 stages that the builder will go through typically, and what they do is they communicate directly with you. They copy me in as well, and they're keeping you up to date and your mortgage broker because they want to get paid as soon as they finish each stage. So you'll get a whole pile of pictures at each stage. An NDIS certifier has to go out at each stage and make sure that that stage has been done okay as well. So sometimes, but not always, we might get some feedback from them. And the mortgage broker is also notified because the builder wants his payment. Depending on where it is, occasionally I'll go and have a look at it as well, because I also might be taking other customers out there to have a look, depending on what stage it's at, and we'll have a look too. yeah, so there's at least 5 updates that you're going to get as it goes through the process. And when they start, they'll send you a timeline as when they expect things to happen as well. So you've got a rough idea of when things should be finished. When each stage should be finished too.
Cool.
So pretty
Thanks.
good. All right.
Salisbury North looks like a great part, like a pretty good part of Adelaide. Like it's pretty close to the CBD.
Yeah, I was having a good look before. It's sort of it's one of the new areas of Adelaide. So I shouldn't say new area. It's an old area, but there's a whole lot of new estates that are in there because it's one of the closest areas to the CBD. It's in that growth corridor as well, and unfortunately we see lots of demand in the new estates for NDIS stuff, which is where young families are moving to. It's their kids. Correct.
Cool.
Correct. Still, the number one area demand is around Mildura, and also in South Australia, but miles away up in Renmark. As well. Alrighty. All right. Thanks, guys. Hopefully by next week I'll work out how to do an email blast as well. All right. Cheers.
Thanks.
See ya.
See you, bye.
Yeah.
Thanks.